Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Brian. We don't really have a theme this week. I'm just going back and looking at some older theme submissions and seeing if anything that wasn't picked for the themes kind of catches my fancy. And today we have one from Sarah Brightman. This is an artist who I know of, but don't believe I've listened to anything of hers. We might have listened to something in a live stream. I don't think so, though. I believe I only know her from her performance as Mag in the musical play for film called Repo, the Genetic Opera. So we're going to be looking at something of hers today called Captain Nemo off of the Dive album. This was suggested for the Watery Vibes theme. I'm expecting some, well, watery vibes on this one. Let's dive in and see what Sarah's bringing to the table today.
Just like I had mine, we'll go separate ways till the next time. There are no words to say. There are no words to say. As my friend swims away, as my friend swims away.
I'm kind of curious when this came out. I mean, as you can see over there, we're about 25% under max volume. It also has a 80s feel from the synth, but I think also some of the percussion too. But the formant shifting tells me it's more modern, while the contrast tells me it's older. The really heavy reverb of the wood blocks, very underwater. Maybe that's not formant shifting. Maybe just really dropping the larynx and then making it very airy. Yeah, this definitely feels older. I think that's actually a different vocalist. Now that they're a little brighter in the mix. very little new guitar part. Got a pretty lengthy fade out here, it looks like. All right. Yeah, I definitely stand a little firmer on that being an older track there. It wasn't formant shifting there. I think it was a second vocalist still kind of dropping their larynx a bit, putting a lot of airiness in it, really going for that lower sound there. But once we got to the final choruses, I don't know. The final outro part, we got to hear that up about an octave or so. Yeah, a different timbre to Sarah's vocals, so it's probably just a different vocalist overall. So without that in the mix, everything in here screams 80s, maybe, between the electric drum kit and the synthesizer tones or the keyboard tones, whatever's being done there, the vocal production, the heavy, clear use of mix. Let me rephrase that. It's just a clarity of mix. There's just so much spaciousness everywhere. It's very different from the wall of sound that we still hear. I mean, that we hear even in pop music these days. It's just very much for maximum sound in general. And this has that openness that, I mean, even if you go back to like metal of the 80s, going for that wall of sound, it's still more open than post 2000s, post 2020s metal. There's just room for things to breathe back then. And I'm going to be honest, part of me misses it. Something about this feels very loose in a way that even pop music, contemporary to this track, but decades later, and they just don't have anymore. And I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but there's certainly room for subjective taste in there. And I do miss this sort of expansive sound. But the expansive sound is also what gives it its vibes. This was suggested for watery vibes, and there's plenty of reverb in here to help with that. We have the echoes of the vocals. They'll say like, I don't know, okay, or something like that. And then you'll have the K, 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 K. Just the delay and reverberation of that sounds like an echo. We had that wood block at the time that you really don't get the initial hit too much, but you do get a lot of that reverb sound from it. A lot of that just has a very underwatery sound to it. What I found really interesting though is I don't know if I necessarily would have come at this from a water angle without my mind already being in that mindset. There were certainly elements of it, 100%. The last two things I mentioned, they work really well for water. But I think most of my mind kind of goes towards space. And I think that's because a lot of this tends to be treble heavy, and I associate bassiness with being underwater. The drowning, the filling of the ears with water, the muffling of everything. When you put your head underwater, when you submerge yourself, there's a very muffled feeling. Brightness, thinness, clarity, those aren't things I typically associate with water. But there is an expansiveness to this track. There is a shimmering beauty throughout. I think it's the heavy use of symbols on this and just a lot of clear, colorful symbol usage throughout. Again, kind of still an 80s thing, but I think it fits with the atmosphere of this really well. And a little bit of fear, maybe. I think generally this is an upbeat dance track, but there is uncertainty in the harmonic element. It is just a part of it, though. I don't think this is a song dictated by uncertainty, but I think it's difficult or maybe even impossible to deny the fact that there is some sort of negative emotion baked into the harmonic values here. It is mostly positive. It's mostly a break track production wise. Harmonically, we are looking at something, I wouldn't say it's super uplifting. It's not anthemic or anything like that, but it is brighter. It's certainly not a sappy ballad or anything like that, but there is this little, a little bit of darkness. It's kind of tucked away underneath everything. And I read it as uncertainty. And when I think of vastness, when I think of uncertainty, when I think of expansiveness and space, I do think of space 100%. But those qualities also fit really well with the ocean. The vastness of the ocean, the uncertainty of being in the ocean, the dangers lurking in such a vast section that still to this day we know very little about. We continue to learn more and more about the creatures, the ecosystems of the depths, the utter depths of the ocean. It is still a rather unknown area for us. Almost, well, I was going to say almost as unknown as space, but space is so much larger than our planet, our solar system, our galaxy, that the vastness is almost incomprehensible. Certainly more to explore than the oceans of one planet. But I think it still kind of catches a lot of those same vibes. And I think when you pair those feelings with the reverb, with the delay, with the echo of this, it does feel watery at times. Not the way I traditionally feel water in music, but I think I would be remiss to say that this isn't a track that exhibits watery vibes. It absolutely is, just in a way that's a little less, I don't know if I should say less common in music, but I find to be less frequent in the musical explorations of water that I have heard. But it's still there. And I think that in and of itself is excellent. I love being presented with something different that causes me to reevaluate my relationships to sounds, rhythms, textures, instruments, techniques, whatever, vibes, if you will. I had an idea of what a watery vibe is, and that's been challenged. And that's only ever for the positive. Being stuck in your ways and denying anything that opposes it is a terrible way to live your life. It is the opposite of growth. Being challenged, whether you come out solidified in your opinion or not, is still the way to do things. You have to challenge your own ideas, morals, beliefs, whatever. Whether it's art, spirituality, politics, tastes. But food, you say you don't like a food, every 5 years or so, try it again. See if your taste buds have changed. See if your taste buds have matured. From little things to big things, from the mundane to the philosophical, challenging one's own ideas is paramount to living a good life. And right here, my ideas of what is water music has been challenged. And I'm glad, because I came out of this track thinking, yeah, this is water music 100%. And it has expanded my mind of what water music can be. Now, on the non-thematic side of things, it's a pretty straightforward 80s. Well, I haven't looked up the date. It feels very 80s to me. A dancey pop track. It's got the synthesizers. We get a lot of chord-based stuff from that, though we also have a few textural ideas. Oh, 3 or 4 notes over there, a few notes over there. It's kind of creating some texture to this track. We have some guitar parts that pop in every once in a while too. There was that section in the second chorus, I think it was, just bouncing between 2 notes, a very tiny guitar center channel behind the vocalist. Not really adding a lot, but certainly doing something different that wasn't there previously. Not trying to take attention away from everything else, but just adding to the atmosphere of things. Lots of little ideas like that popping up. This is a track, as pop music likes to be, that is full of layers, things that are constantly changing. I don't even think the first 2 verses are the same. Maybe the same bones, foundation to them, but what we add, when we add it, how we add it, those change. And of course, we had the verse, chorus, a bridge. I think it was 8 bars total, and there was no melody there. I don't even know if I can really call it a bridge. Felt more like a long transition. And then we did the choruses again, like 2 of them, 3 of them. And that faded out to the end. But in those choruses, we got new background parts, we got secondary vocal parts, we ramped up the second vocalist, their pitch, brought it up an octave. So there's quite a bit of contrast and change in this track. I don't know if that is just something that compositionally they wanted these dynamic qualities to it, or if the concept of change in and of itself is thematically appropriate to this track. We will engage that in the lyrics. But regardless, there is a lot of small details that get shifted around through this song. But when you listen to the main melody, you listen to the drum beat, you listen to the chord progression, those 3 elements are fairly static throughout. And the fact that after the second chorus, we have a quick 8-bar idea that adds nothing, just kind of exists. And then we have 2 more minutes of chorus after that. It is a song that feels incredibly repetitive if you're only focusing on those main ideas. It is really the textures, the layers, the embellishing ideas that expand on it, but they are also secondary and sometimes even tertiary in the mix. Stuff that you're not supposed to actively engage with, but you are supposed to feel on some level. The song is supposed to feel transient and evolving, but it isn't supposed to be something that is constantly progressive either. A majority of this, the core foundation of it, is very structural, very similar throughout. So in a lot of ways, pop music has always been doing that. It's not unusual for that to show up in the lyrics too, but it isn't necessarily a guarantee. This is just the way music like this has been produced. But I think I walk away from this track enjoying it for challenging me and having a good time. I danced my way through this track, so yeah, that's never a bad thing. But I doubt it's going to be something I come back to. It's missing the thing that grabs me for repeat listens. But Sarah Brightman does a phenomenal job singing here, as I expect. Although I did find it interesting, unless I'm thinking of a different person, I've only ever heard Sarah do operatic singing, and this was more traditional pop singing. So it is nice to see a little bit of a different side for this. But I enjoyed it. And I kind of want to dig into more of her work, even if this one isn't something I would come back to for a second listen. Let's check out some lyrics for this one. We'll see what's going on there. We have a fairly straightforward track here. Each verse is 4 lines. We have a pre-chorus that is 2 lines. That gives us 6 lines in total for both verses and pre-choruses. Then we have an 8-line chorus that is done 5 times throughout this track, though I'm not sure if the final time is fully heard because there is the fade out there at the end of the track. Regardless, we do hear the chorus quite a bit, and it drastically overshadows the amount of time we spend with the verse. Now, the verse talks about a separation of worlds between 2 people. I don't know if it's 2 people, but we'll touch on that in a second. Verse 1 just shows a separation. Under the surface, so crystal clear, he had his own world just like I had mine. We'll go our separate ways until the next time. So we're talking about the surface of the water. It's crystal clear. She can peer down into it. She sees him. In the chorus, we'll find that this thing is named Captain Nemo, and that they are separated by the surface of the water, sitting in their own realms. The pre-chorus says, "There are no words to say as my friend swims away." So pretty much the same thing the end of the first one said, that they are separating until they see each other next. The second verse says, "I watched as police boats approached. I wished I could stay here and play for a while, but I must be on my way, the warmest of smiles." So even though they're separating, she's still happy. She knows that there'll be a next time that they get to meet and hang out, and that while leaving is not great, it isn't, depressive or melancholic either. They had a great time. They will have a great time in the future. It's very optimistic about this friendship. The second pre-chorus, though, says he dived into the waves among the other whales. And this is very interesting because it doesn't elaborate on this at all. The chorus says, "Captain Nemo said okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then I raised my hand and Captain Nemo went away. Love me when I'm gone, left me all alone, Nemo's going home." So the chorus is all about the separation. They had their time together, and then Nemo raised his hand, counted down, and then they had to separate until next time. So this entire song is just about our narrator and Captain Nemo living in two different worlds. Sometimes, rarely, they get to spend some time with each other, but it seems to always be short-lived, and there is always a longing for the next time that they will be able to meet again. It also seems that they are separated by forces beyond just the separation of realm. One lives in the water, one lives on land. That already keeps them apart. But verse 2 talks about police boats approaching, calling them an alien force haunting us like ghosts. So there are external forces that also seek to separate them. And that's the whole song. So is this friendship with a whale? That seems pretty cool. There's very few songs I can think of off the top of my head that are like, hey, I have a whale best friend. But the song has no intent in diving into that at all, leaving it a bit vague. See, Captain Nemo in the Jules Verne, is that the author of the books that feature Captain Nemo? He lives in a submarine, or he works in a submarine or something like that. And so presenting that as a whale could be a metaphor that Nemo is a sea creature. Someone who lives beneath the sea for a majority of the time and is a giant oval-esque object beneath the water, very whale-like in ways. But is this just a literal whale that she named Captain Nemo? I don't know. I don't think that there is... Let me put it this way. I think what I was about to say was going to be a little dismissive. I want to reword it. I personally, after just a single listen and a single read through of these lyrics, don't see anything of depth to dive into here regarding was it really a whale or not. But that doesn't mean that there isn't. Maybe there's a second layer here that I'm completely missing, and the purpose of that conversation there actually leads to a greater understanding of this track. But like I mentioned, as far as I can see, this entire song is the person I like to spend time with is of a different world. Whether that is a whale or not, I don't think matters. It is a song about the separation of two people. And I think all of the reverb in here ties into that, a feeling of loneliness. I think there's a reason that the reverb really only appears in some parts of this track. Because there are times in this story where she gets to be with Captain Nemo. They get to hang out, chill for a bit, feeling a little less lonely there. The other parts of the track where the reverb comes in, or the whispers too. I remember those in the first verse, first pre-chorus, something like that, early on in the track. Another feeling of isolation and loneliness. I think just presenting that, regardless of what the metaphor is or what it is supposed to represent, still tells a story of loneliness and companionship and trying to have optimism within trying times. And the song does a great job of pushing that forward musically. These are just going to be my thoughts, though, on Sarah Brightman's Captain Nemo. What did you think of this song? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this track? Let me know. Put all of that, as well as anything else you'd like to, into the comments section below. Above that, in the description box, is a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.